Sauce.
Hey, you like Pez?
It looks like that. Here's Heaney from the boundary line. He's an expert at these. From the boundary line!
Hello and welcome to Behind the Boundary podcast. I'm your host Pez and I am here with Sauce to talk the 2020 trade period. We promised the Thursday before, but Sauce apparently wasn't available. He's the one that was really keen to, do a lot of pods through the off season. I said, yep, next Thursday we're doing a pod. I promised the listeners, and then comes the Thursday and Sauce goes, yeah, I'm not available this week. We'll do it next week.
Well, I said I could do it on the Friday or the Saturday or the Sunday. Just was unavailable that one day, Pez.
Oh, well, that's when the beers flow on the Friday, the Saturday and Sunday.
Well, you could have had beers with me, mate. Like just because we run a very successful podcast
No,
together.
we live in Melbourne. There's only one person allowed round, and you were second in line.
Second in line. So, wow. That's I'm just a little bit hurt. I don't. You know what? I'm unavailable tonight.
Unavailable tonight.
I'm available tonight. I'm going to take the beer, the very best that you've offered me here, and on my way. We might do a podcast next week if you can fit me in your Mr. Popular. Jeez, two friends. Wouldn't it be nice?
No, it's all right. When Sunday comes around, hopefully we can have 10 people around, and then maybe
have
we'll
a live audience. Remember last time we had a live audience? How that went?
We did have a live audience, and Sauce just went to water.
Went to absolute water, and you were not very helpful either, mate, because you were a little bit on liquid courage, I think is probably a good way to put it, and you were flying.
12, 14 cans deep. It's not bad.
Not bad at all.
Well, we are here to talk about the 2020 trade period, Sauce, and the last podcast talked about the free agency and who was getting signed, what was happening, and we didn't really want to talk rumours because here on Behind the Boundary podcast, we don't like to talk rumours, we like to talk facts, and we like to give our opinion on what's actually happened. We say we don't like to talk rumours, but I was on the phone to you every single day going, what's happening?
That's a cheeky one. I wasn't allowed around for a beer, but you gave me a phone call every day.
Well, that's all right. But we're going to go through each and every trade that did happen in the trade period. We're going to talk about it. I like the way it worked this year in terms of the quickness of it and no mucking around, let's get to it. But I didn't like the way that it started at the start of the final series.
It was very funny because you just talked about the quickness of it, but one of the things I found most frustrating is I felt like we were talking about the same trades from day one of the trade period, and as you said earlier on in the actual season than usual in the final series, and a lot of those deals didn't get done till a little bit past the trade deadline on that Thursday night, and but it's been good, Pez. We've had a week to settle. We've been able to have our own little reflection. You've been able to hear about all the news. You've been able to hear how some of the stories have unfolded and how it went down. And
maybe you have, but I haven't because I'm still a bit broken that you didn't come over last Thursday night to do a pod.
Oh, my apologies, Pez. Well, hopefully St Kilda, but they're the first team that we're starting off with, Pez, so that might make you a little bit happy. Do you want to get straight into it, Pez? You were the first trade of the trade period, and you signed as a free agent, so didn't even trade.
Nearly 2 weeks ago, it was the first one there. St Kilda received Sean McKernan as an unrestricted free agent, and sometimes you grow up and you usually have stories about AFL players that you knew or you played against. I actually played against Sean McKernan, not in footy, in basketball, and we went there before the game. He was throwing down slam dunks and things beforehand, and we're like, what's going to happen here? And I'll tell you, it's lucky he's good at footy because he was no good at basketball. He won by about 50 points that day, but good on him. He's a backup for Paddy Ryder and Rowan Marshall, so a bit of insurance, I think, this one.
Yeah, and look, he's going to be the third club that he's played at, a three-club player. He's played Adelaide, obviously, before that, and Essendon, well, he didn't really play at Essendon. He struggled to get on the park a little bit. It's just a nice little, insurance policy, I guess, and you pretty much you signed him for nothing, not much at all. So
yeah, it's a bit
of a nothing deal. It's a bit of a disappointing way to actually start.
And the only reason we're talking about it is because I played basketball against him back in the day. But
I just had to get your Fig Jam story in there, mate. The 50-point winners. What did you contribute to the team?
I probably dropped 40, 10 and 20 rebounds.
What were you doing? You're doing the score. You're doing the buttons.
And I missed a few points because I only got 40. We'll go into the proper deals anyway. We've got we won't go into the proper deals. We'll go into a pick swap. So how's this one, Sauce? Brisbane receives a third round pick, which was currently 53rd pick, and a future third round selection from the Demons. And the Demons received a third round pick, which was 43. So they've actually moved up 10 spots, and a future fourth round pick.
Not really much to talk about, is it? This has been an absolute flyer to this one. Glad we didn't start last Thursday, but it's an interesting one. This I think you'll see a lot more of this going forward now with something that we'll talk a little bit later on with teams now. Sort of, I think, are pulling back the control in terms of the trade period. We saw, obviously the standoff between a couple of players this time, especially with Geelong, I was about to say Golden State then, GWS and Jeremy Cameron. I think you'll see a lot more pick swaps and teams trying to help get those sort of assets to be able to trade, which is good because I think that for too long, the players have had full range at it, and I think it's good that the clubs are starting to get a bit more control over it.
Yeah, well, they need to get what they're worth. I know you've spoken about before in the past, Sauce, that you think if they're an unrestricted free agent, the club shouldn't receive any compensation or anything like that and just go for it like there. But with the compensation thing in there, people are trying to trade, and some people have taken advantage of that, like the Western Bulldogs, which we'll speak about later, with the father-son system where they've got the points and things like that. So we will discuss that a little bit further. Let's get into some trades for some actual players. The next one was Peter Wright.
2 metre Peter.
How tall is he?
2 metres.
I didn't know that. I was unaware.
You're unaware of the nickname of 2 metre Peter?
I was just unaware how tall he was. I knew his nickname was 2 metre Peter. How tall is he?
203 centimetres.
203.
2 metre. 2 metre Peter.
What a nickname for him. I can't believe we didn't see him in 2020. He must have had the coronavirus or something up there.
He's a red nut like me, and it's too sunny.
It was too hot.
Too sunny up
the
there.
Gold Coast, so he's had to come down to Essendon.
Had to come down.
Hopefully, he hopes there's no more coronavirus so he can play under the roof down at Telstra Dome down there.
Yeah, he didn't play last year, obviously, 2020 at all. He had no games, had a bit of an injury, fell out of favour with the team, and realistically with the acquisition of your friend, mate, there, the King boy, there was no chance he was getting into that forward line, and he sort of floated between a ruck spot as well as a backup forward. But, with that exciting forward line of Rankine and King and that, there's no chance he was getting a game. It's what Essendon need. They do need that second forward with losing Joe Danaher. He's played for 5 years in the league. He's averaging probably about 16, 17 games. He played 17, 22, injury-ridden with 7, and then 2 years ago with 17. Obviously, we just said fell out of favour, couldn't get inside, but good little pickup for them. A nice little acquisition.
A great pickup, and Peter Wright would be wrapped because he's playing for Essendon, so he will actually get a game. So that will be very, very good.
He still won't play finals. He'll get a game.
He won't play finals, but he will get a game, so that's good for him. And 5 years in the system, this is about the time where they come into their prime. He could stand up and do something for the Bombers and possibly be their leading goal kicker or something like that.
It wouldn't be hard, mate.
No,
they lost Joe Danaher, they lost Fantasia. There's not many people left there.
He'd have to kick about 22 goals, but yeah.
Won a game. That's not bad, but that's pretty good for a 5-year player. But you're right. He's coming into the right age. He was a highly touted sort of player. He was part of that weird draft format where they had early picks, and they went up to the Gold Coast a little bit earlier as a teenager. Didn't quite develop into the player that he was probably expected to. But at the same time, he's a tall forward, 203 centimetres, is big. He had pretty clean hands for memory. We're going back 2 years. He would be able to kick a snag, you would assume.
You used to pop up for first goal every now and then, I remember, on the cheeky pump pod.
2 metre Peter?
I think it was a cheeky sometimes, big 2 metre Peter. I think he needs a new nickname.
But not only that, no way. You keep the 2 metre Peter.
No.
You got to keep it.
2.03 metre Peter.
That is horrible, Pez. But
that's what I'll be calling him from now on.
The thing is, he wasn't very successful, obviously, at the Gold Coast. But if you look at the team that they had and how many wins they had in those first couple of years, you can't expect a forward to be kicking a lot of goals. Like, when he was getting a regular gig, Pez, he was kicking a decent sort of amount of goals. Like, every time he played over 10 games in that season, he kicked over 20 goals. And that to me is a real good indication. I mean, the highest amount of goals that he kicked in a team that wasn't doing well was 2019 when he kicked 27 goals. Like, that's a great amount of goals to be kicking for a team that's probably only kicked 30 goals for the year.
Yeah, so he's proven that he can play on a team at the bottom of the ladder, and Essendon going to be at the bottom of the ladder or near thereabouts. Perfect opportunity for Peter Wright to kick 20 or 30 and have a successful season and continue his career.
But not only that, Pez, the delivery is going to be a lot better than it was in 2019. Yeah, like 2 years. What's that? 2 years ago now, when they were they won 3 games. The delivery is going to be. Well, you'd hope it would be a lot better.
Yep.
Oh well, their midfield's not too bad. You got McGrath, you got not Heppel, you got
Merritt.
They've got some decent sort of kicks going in there. They lost Sard, obviously, which we'll discuss later.
You got Shield, he just bombs it in there, but hopefully they can spot him up a couple of times. Hopefully he has a success because 2.03 metre Peter, we love him behind the boundary podcast.
We do, as you said, he was part of one of our first sort of podcasts, our first cheeky that we sort of won. You have to go back in the tapes and the archives and find that out. But back onto some more exciting stuff, Pez.
This is my favourite.
Yep, this is a big pick swap. So the D's offload future picks to get more 2020 capital. It was a huge one. They received a second round pick, currently number 33, and a third round pick, currently number 50, to Adelaide.
And Adelaide get the future second round and future fourth round. So Melbourne just wanting to put some things in place. We don't know if there's like academy players coming in. There's different reasons teams do pick swaps. If it's a later deal that they've agreed in principle on verbally before that, then they'll keep going like that. But if it's a father-son and they need to get points and they need to get extra things, then they do that as well.
Yeah, and I think that you and I were having a discussion beforehand about the point sort of allocation, and the DTSI or whatever they call it, is about building those points so that you can make a bid for that pick, so that, you pick number 17 and your player's going at number 1, you have to give away a certain amount of assets and points. And that's what obviously Melbourne are doing. They're obviously building into this draft. They sort of were a couple of wins away from making finals this year. So they obviously believe in their list, and they're looking to acquire some assets going forward, to help build that sort of young core. So, and speaking of Melbourne, as well as that, they continue that trend. They traded off Mitch Hannon. So they traded off Mitch Hannon for a future third round selection. So a bit disappointing for Mitch Hannon to receive back that. Mitch Hannon was pretty consistent for Melbourne, and he was a decent sort of player for him.
Yeah, well, he was playing in the forward line because they had no big tall forwards, but obviously with Ben Brown, who we'll speak about later, coming into that forward line, they have to get rid of a few of those smaller forwards. So Mitch Hannon was one of them, and he started off his career over at the Bulldogs. So he's going back there, and they're very excited about it. And I think Mitch Hannon, they've delisted players like Sam Lloyd, so coming back into their forward line, hopefully they can make some use out of him at the Bulldogs with that powerful midfield that everyone's talking about. They need someone to kick it to because we know Josh Bruce is down there and kicked about 17 goals in a 17-game season with 6 in one game. But Mitch Hannon might be kicking a couple of snags next season.
Yeah, he definitely could be. Realistically, one of the Bulldogs' problems this year was that they had a lot of problems trying to score. Mitch Wallace being your leading goal kicker is not good enough for that sort of forward line. So hopefully Mitch Hannon will help share the load. You wouldn't expect him to become the leading goal kicker, but it might help free up some of those taller forwards there that realistically need to start to shine. A couple of those premiership players really need to start making a name for themselves and stop living off that 2017 premiership.
Yeah, well, we know in the last 2 seasons he kicked 10, but before that he kicked 22 and 22 goals.
Big seasons.
So he's been thereabouts, Mitch Hannon, and when Melbourne were up and about, he was up and about. So if the Doggies can get up and about, get the ball in there, bang, he's gone there. In Melbourne, we know Melbourne's forward line, they've had a few years of, they've been struggling down there. They've had Petrarca, come in and lead their goal kicking and things like that. So you got Bailey Fritsch in there, who's another option, and Mitch Hannon became the 4th or 5th, 6th option, which is why he only kicked 6 goals last year, and why they didn't really need him when they got Ben Brown.
Yeah, and especially with the Bulldogs being a team, when they do sort of pile it on, everyone gets fed. So he'll be able to pop up for a couple of sneaky goals, a couple of extra snags, and you'd assume that he'd be a walk-up start in that Western Bulldogs side. Previously he definitely would have, with the amount of talent that's going through that midfield now. They
might have to play some of them forward.
Exactly right. So it'll be very interesting how they're going to and I can't wait to get into that discussion with you, Pez, but it'll be interesting to see how they fare. Getting on to players that are going to be at their third club. Braden Pruce moving on to his third club, which I find just unbelievable that he continually is going to clubs, that have established ruckmans, and now he's going to GWS, where he should, you would assume, get the walk-up start.
Look, he's definitely going to be the number 1 ruckman there. Apparently Shane Mumford is still on the list.
Yeah, still on the list.
But I don't think Shane Mumford's in the shape to play AFL footy anymore. I'm glad he was playing in those.
He's only there for one thing, mate. He's
and
only
he didn't
there for
do
one
it.
thing, and he didn't do it.
He didn't do it in 2019 when we wanted him to do it in the prelim and then in the grand
Cost me a
final.
lot of paint. He did.
Yeah,
A lot of money on
that
paint.
My shed out there is still stacked of orange paint. Can't get rid of it. I'm going to paint my house orange.
The orange shed at the back.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I painted that shed. I'm going to paint my fences as well on the weekend. I'm going to paint them orange as well. But Braden Pruce, I thought the move, and I think you did as well, Sauce, the move to Melbourne was very, very silly by him. Like, he thought they were going to play 2 ruckmen with Max gone. The game wasn't heading like that. So I didn't like the move to Melbourne in the first place. He should have gone to a team that didn't have an established ruckman, because he's shown some stuff when Max Gawn's been out, and he showed some stuff at North Melbourne when Todd Goldstein was out as well. So I think he can be really good at GWS.
As you said, it was a crazy move. He's coming into he's played since 2016. He was drafted. Since then, what's that? 4 years. He has played 18 games. 18 games, and he's going on to his 3rd club, and still, every time that he does step on, he seems to make an impact. He just can't keep a regular game in the side because he's going against Todd Goldstein and Max Gawn, two of the top 3 ruckmen in the league. It was a crazy move.
He's probably a bit too slow for a permanent forward, but when he played forward for Melbourne, he actually kicked some goals, and he actually showed something and showed a target instead of kicking to Bailey Fritsch every single time, and he impressed there. So Melbourne receives that pick 31, which is a second round GWS Giants pick. So Melbourne stockpiling the picks, get rid of Braden Pruce, who they didn't really need because their captain Max Gawn is going to play most of the games anyway. If he gets injured, their season's pretty much over anyway. So Braden Pruce has a lot to prove, and GWS on the rebound from having a shocking 2020.
Yeah, most definitely. And speaking of North Melbourne, they are the team that we talk about next.
I said shocking 2020. You said speaking of North.
Exactly right.
There we go.
No, I was talking about the Braden Pruce, and you know what? I actually can't be too judgmental with North Melbourne during this pod, Pez, and I'm going to ask you to hold your reserves, because what they end up doing is they end up following the Behind the Boundary podcast advice and actually restocking. They got rid of Ben Brown, and we're going to talk about it later, but they also got a whole lot of different picks and some really, really promising talent. So good job for North. We'll try not to bash them during this. We'll wait till they actually perform poorly, because in the off-season, they've done well.
They did well in this trade. This is a 3-way trade. So
great trade. And you know what? There should be more 3-way trades. I love a 3-way trade.
We like 3-way trades at the Behind the Boundary podcast here. But North received Lockie Young from the Western Bulldogs. So he comes over to North. And they received a 4th-round pick, which is pick 70, and they gave up pick 63. So they gave 7 spots up in the draft and received a player in Lockie Young, who they'll most likely use because they don't have a list at the moment. Brisbane received that pick from North, as we said, but the Bulldogs received Stephen Martin, which is a big coup for them, because Tim English needs a lot of help there in the ruck. Yeah,
really, really big thing for Western Bulldogs. One of the things that really struggled with them is the inconsistency of getting that pill to their midfielders. With that building midfield, which is going to be an elite midfield on paper, is what you need. You need first look at the pill, and especially where the Western Bulldogs, again, I think really underperformed this year. All eyes will be on them to really make some noise next year. And an established ruckman, from listening to me, Pez, that in order to win finals, and you look at the last 10 premiership winners, they've all had established ruckmans. Stephen Martin is definitely that. Yeah, you got to have something. You can't have no established ruckman. And Stephen Martin, I have a Bulldogs mate, and he was a bit weary. I think it's a great pickup.
He's a bit weary about getting Stephen Martin at his age, but they need someone to help Tim English there. Tim English can play a little bit forward. Stephen Martin might play 60-70% in the ruck, and just really help him out and really help him develop as a player. They've got that midfield around them as well. So kudos to the Western Bulldogs there. They didn't give up much. They gave up Lockie Young, who probably wasn't going to be in the side anyway. And they got Stephen Martin. Yeah, worst case scenario, even if he is injured or he's a little bit of the old. I mean, he's 34 years old. In football years as a ruckman, that's not that much wear and tear. Especially when he's had a pretty good run over the last 5 or 6 years. He's played majority of those games. Had a bit of an injury-ridden season this one, but in the shortened season, still played 8 games, which is pretty good. I think that he'll be able to teach the young pups there to be able to actually ruck and show them where to put it in there. And he's had success. He was rucking to a Brownlow medalist last year, and there's a reason that he was a Brownlow medalist, is that a lot of the time he got first look at the pill. Yeah, well, Lockie Neal got his Brownlow medal. We liked it. We liked making some money on that. And the next one is Lockie Fogarty from your Geelong Cats going over to Carlton Sauce.
Yeah, good little pickup for Carlton here, and it was it's good for Mr. Fogarty as well. He wasn't able to get into the regular startup with obviously Hawkins, and then obviously with we'll discuss a little bit later was Jeremy Cameron in there. He's only a third year player. Averaging probably about 5 or 6 games. The first year he had 15 in his very first year. So he's got some talent there. It's just about staying on the park and, building that consistency. Super young, 21 years old. He's not as big as 2 metre Peter, only the 180, but...
a small type guy who goes up forward and can kick some goals. So Carlton saw what they wanted with him and saw they could pick him up for cheap. They also received the second round pick, which is currently 38, and Geelong got pick 30 back. So it was a pick swap there. And then Geelong also get a third round pick, which is about 51. So, Carlton lose 8 spots in the draft in the second round, and then they give up pick 51 and get Fogarty back. So, probably win-win for both sides there, I'd say.
Yeah, and then, this sort of follows the trend of the next trade where Geelong traded away Nakai Cockatoo, receiving a third round selection, which was attached to Melbourne, a future third round pick. Obviously making some room and some salary cap room so that they can afford to sign some of these players. Trying to move some pieces around to try and at this stage they were trying to entice GWS to come to the park and play. Yeah,
because they needed big Jezza Cameron, their Coleman medalist from a couple of years ago, but. Brisbane, I think Brisbane got a really good deal here. They got Nakai Cockatoo, who's shown real talent, hasn't been able to get on the park, and you know what? In trade period, that's what you usually say, Sauce. You say, these are the players, they got some potential. They haven't been able to get on the park. If they get a good run at it, they'll do this. But I think Nakai Cockatoo is one of those players that, might fit into Brisbane quite nicely and might just go along. And in a couple of years' time, Brisbane, Geelong fans would be like, we let one slip.
Yeah, and look, it wasn't the fact that he couldn't get on the park. He just couldn't stay healthy. This year was meant to be his year, his breakout year, and he couldn't get on the park because of injury, and because that other people around him took his spot. And he, every time he played, you're sort of getting there going, oh my God, and you see brilliant, absolute shades of brilliance, especially from his uncle. He looked very similar to the way that, Shea Cockatoo Collins used to play. But Brisbane got an absolute steal in this one. Obviously couldn't get on the park for Geelong. Brisbane saw the opportunity. I don't know if he's a walk-up start in that Brisbane lineup, but he adds some depth to that team, and it's a new start for him as well. He's a bit closer to home up there. He's still 24 years of age.
That's the age you want to get him at if you can for cheap, because that's for cheap. And Nakai Cockatoo, he's shown some talent. It's all right to take a risk on him for a third rounder and just be like, you know what? If we can get him on the park and get him to do a couple of things, he might surprise and might come out of his shell and do a bit for us.
And especially when, as you said, Pez, he's had a bit of a rough start to his career. He goes to a new club, new start, and, at the same time, while it's a new start for him, you also have that sense of, well, this could be my last leg. If I can't impress here, especially with the lists becoming shorter, you're probably 2 years away from not being in the AFL again, or in the system. So for him, it's a great opportunity to prove how good a footballer he is.
Yeah, you're definitely right there. And you mentioned the list sizes. List sizes dropped from 47 down to 44. And I cannot believe that clubs didn't know this before the trade period.
Yeah, crazy. I thought more players would have... I thought the clubs would have pushed a little bit harder to know that knowledge, because it makes an extreme amount of difference when unloading players. And maybe that's what, Geelong have just unloaded a whole lot of players and got picks back. They might not have the list to be able to build that anymore, because you're going to take some new talent or someone that's already there, a bit established in a draft that's not that touted with talent.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
Unknown talent's probably a better way to put it.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of talk about that this year, but I've been thinking, of course there've been no talent. No one's seen any of them play.
Yeah.
They haven't played.
Except for the kid from the Western Bulldogs in Northern Territory who's attached to him. Apparently he's going to be the next Buddy Franklin, but everyone else from that is no good. So apparently
there could be some big surprises out of the 2020 draft. Big steals. And big steals, because if you take a risk on a player who, had some potential when they were 17, you didn't see much of them when they were, 18, 19, heading into the draft. Keep watch on that. Adam Sard to Carlton. Finally got done. Carlton, they got Adam Sard. up. They got a 3rd round pick and swapped their 1st round pick, which was number 8. So they got 48 back for number 8. They also got a 4th round pick, 78, and swapped it for 87. So a couple of draft swaps, and Carlton got Adam Sard. So Essendon get pick 8, and they've got 6, 7, and 8 now.
Yeah, I think the big story for this one is Dodoro actually picked up the phone and agreed to something. I think that's the big talking point here, is that he actually dealt with another club in a way that obviously wasn't a great way to deal with him, because he had the same offer from day one to the end. But he got a deal done, which is rare for Essendon. So well done to Essendon in the trade period, and well done to Dodoro to actually get a deal done.
Yeah, well done. He did get a deal done, and we know he's been a hard man to work with, and Essendon supporters have been loving it. But, it's sometimes it comes back to bite Essendon on the backside, which it has later in the trade talk that we'll speak about.
Yeah, and for Carlton, this is an amazing pickup for them. I didn't realise that he was only 26 years old, Adam Sard. I feel like he's been around the league.
That's the age bracket.
I feel like he's been around the league for so long, and that's because, he plays so many games and he is such a solid staple. Through his whole career, he hasn't played anything less than, take out he's actually going to be a 3rd club player too.
3rd club player.
And that's incredible, because he did get drafted so young, and for the first year he played 16 games as that 18-year-old, and he's an absolute talent. He fits perfectly in Essendon's lineup. I don't know how he actually fits in Carlton's, because that's not the style of football that they play.
They come out of the back line pretty slowly.
They do, and one of his strengths is he's an elite kick and he moves that ball quickly and be able to counter. But
does he change their whole game plan and what they've been working on? It's going to be very strange.
He should hope so.
He knows he's going in there to play a role, and he's not a midfielder.
No.
He's not. He has to run off half back, and he has to take it on. You watch his highlights, Gold Coast and Essendon. He just gets it and he bolts and he hits a target. And that's what you need. If Carlton can do that, Carlton can, break that first line of defence and get it into their forward line a little bit quicker. They might be finding themselves scoring a lot more goals.
Yeah, they could, and they got better around the ground as well. And one of the things that Carlton have always had a lot of success in is their back line, but one of the things that has obviously stapled their growth is that slow movement and costly turnover. So bringing in some elite talent at that position, and, the good teams have a quarterback, and that's the sort of role that he plays, and he sort of, really established that role in Essendon. And, I'm not going to say that he won a lot of games off their boot, but he definitely kept them in games with that style of play.
Yeah, and got them cheap goals at the other end.
100%.
When they wouldn't have got it without him. So Adam Sard in a Carlton jersey, we'll look forward to seeing it in 2021. We move on to Aliir, and I cannot believe this. Aliir goes to Port Adelaide. Sydney receives a future 2nd round pick. I really rate Aliir as a talent. He is confident. He takes the game on. He can take an overhead grab. He can play at both ends of the ground. I prefer to see him in defence when he can, defend one-on-one and then actually take the mark and just go. And he does do that. I love watching Aliir play, and seeing him in a Port Adelaide jumper will be quite weird.
It will be extremely weird, but the thing that is really exciting about Aliir, sorry, I didn't stutter then, that's actually, that's how you pronounce it, is, again, he's in that bracket, Pez, 26 years old, but the more exciting thing is that he's still learning the game, and that's what's so exciting. He's it's incredible to think that, he's actually only in his 4th season of AFL football, and he's already become a real integral part of Sydney's lineup. And this year, we saw him go up forward and start to learn and develop that role. He's got so much versatility around the ground. He's tall, he's athletic.
Goes in the ruck sometimes.
Yeah, so and you know what? You love seeing him? He loves playing footy. And you can see that he's got that thirst for knowledge. Those famous scenes when he was, matching up against Roughhead in that VFL game, and he's asking questions and asking.
Yep.
He wants to learn. Amazing pickup for their, Port Adelaide in that up-and-coming season. Trying to see if they can back it up.
Mate, I love the pickup. I think he's going to be in the wrong jumper because he would have fit in perfectly to St Kilda's list at the moment. I think slotting him in to centre-half back with Dougal Howard down at full-back, I think that would have been amazing. If we could have got him for a future second rounder, the deal should have been done. But maybe he wanted to go to Port Adelaide. We don't know the backstory. But when I saw this deal, I messaged my family group chat, all St Kilda supporters, and just said, you know what, should have got Aliir.
Yeah, you should have got a Leody here. That's hard to say. But you are right there. He would have been a perfect fit for St Kilda, but I actually think he's a perfect fit for Port Adelaide as well, because one of the things that we spoke about during both their finals was the lack of depth back there, and they needed someone who was able to run with those taller forwards. They've seen that. They've addressed that. Whether he plays there or not, but he can definitely compete with the best of those forwards and at least, learn to sort of put a stop to some of the things that really killed them.
Yeah, so, slotting him into Port Adelaide at the end of last season, shore it up across the back line down there. He's been known in his career to make mistakes, but I think watching him pretty closely, I think he kicks the ball well, he makes the right decision most of the time, and he'll continue to improve, as we said. So that's really, really big. The next trade was another big one. North losing their best player, Sean Higgins, going to Geelong, and North get a second-round pick, which is pick number 30. Couldn't have got any higher than that. Sean Higgins at his age, Geelong really wanted to try him out and try and get Paddy Dangerfield, Tommy Hawkins, another run at it.
Yeah, and I'm very sceptical about this one. Obviously, you do the deal if you can get it done. He's a 32-year-old sort of AFL football player going for, the seems of the trends of this is the third club. So Bulldogs, North Melbourne, and now Geelong. But he was still averaging a decent amount of, possessions. He's averaging probably 10, 15 touches at North Melbourne. In his absolute prime, he was averaging close to 21, 28. The last couple of years. So he's not going to get that outlet at Geelong, but he does add some extra depth and basically he'll play a little bit more up forward, a direct replacement for Gary Ablett.
Oh, yeah, pretty much. So if he can play on the wing, he's got silky smooth skills, and I'm a bit more optimistic about this get than you are, Sauce, because I think his skill, just in his footy, a lot of teams have to work on their kicking and work on hitting targets and things, and Sean Higgins is an absolute gun at doing that. So at Geelong, I think he'll fit in nicely in a top team. He's been in a bottom side for most of his career. He's been at North for the last...
His whole career.
Whatever, and he's been at Bulldogs before that. So he gets to go to a top 4 contender and a premiership contender and see what he can do. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, look, I'm happy with that one that we didn't lose too much out of it. We basically we kept some of those young players that were getting a game. There was talks of us having to give up maybe someone like Radigalia or even Jordan Clark, and even Brendan Parfitt was touted that we might lose during this trade period. We kept all those players that played in our premiership, the grand final. So I'm happy with that. We gave up a second round pick, which is not a big deal when you're competing for a premiership the next year. So we'll see how that goes. I'm still a little bit not sold on that one. I'm
very sceptical.
I'm very sceptical on that one.
We'll wait and see, and I'm sure we'll talk about it on Behind the Boundary in season 2021. The next one is the first player to become a 4-club player, if he can get a game, because I only count him as a 4-club player, Source, if he gets a senior game. It's Tom Hickey. He goes over to the Sydney Swans, who have been struggling in the ruck department and the forward department, in a lot of departments, Sydney, in the past couple of seasons. So they received Tom Hickey, a second-round pick, which is 34, and a third-round pick, which is number 60 for this season. West Coast get a third-round pick, which is 58, a fourth-round pick, which is 62, a future second-round, which is Port Adelaide's, and a future third-round, which is Sydney's.
Yeah, decent sort of deal there, Pez. He played probably most of his career at St Kilda after starting his career at the Gold Coast and then going on to West Coast. Good pickup for the West Coast?
Well, not a good pickup for West Coast because they didn't have him for long.
Sorry, mate. Good pickup for Sydney.
They didn't have him for long, but Sydney, I guess they need someone in there to ruck, and they're going to try and get Tom Hickey to do it. That's what West Coast did, but they had Nick Naitanui, and when Nick Naitanui got healthy and played most of the season, Tom Hickey didn't really have a role. They've also got Nathan Vardy over at West Coast, who they're going to keep as their backup. But by the looks of
Premiership
things,
player Nathan Vardy, which is incredible.
Yeah,
just that's ridiculous.
All right. But yeah, Tom Hickey goes over to Sydney. So Sydney, we think, look, can they come up and compete? Tom Hickey has to do a role in the ruck there. I think he can do his role with his tap work around the ground. He struggles a bit. He struggles with his mobility. He can kick a goal every now and then, but he can't really, take a mark on the lead or take a contested mark or things like that. He just has to fall in his lap. So ruck work, tick. Everything else, not so much. But Sydney, they needed a ruckman. They didn't have to give up too much. They actually got they got some good stuff out of it in terms of pick 34, pick 60, and only had to give up pick 58 and 62. So they improved there and had to give up some futures. So they win for season 2021 at least.
Yeah, and Sydney aren't going to be making finals next year. It keeps them, builds up their ruck stock for the next year or so. And what do they get? They get a pick out of it as well. So it's a bit of a nothing trade. It's good on Tom Hickey for keeping the dream alive. But let's get on to some bigger news, Pez. Another big trade. Another pick swap.
Yes,
that's the fourth or fifth one,
and it's with Melbourne.
It is with Melbourne, and your favourite with North.
Melbourne, no. You're looking at the wrong one, I think.
I'm looking at the one above it, sorry. So looking for, just North are so active during this period, I just thought it was them.
I think it's with them. But no, Melbourne with Sydney, as we were just speaking about, they do a pick swap. Melbourne get pick 25 and Sydney get pick 31. And then Sydney also receive pick 43. So we know Melbourne have stockpiled a lot of picks earlier that we've spoken about. So they're getting rid of a pick because they're not going to use all these picks that they've got. So they got rid of 2 picks and they got 1. So they moved up 6 spots in the draft and got rid of another pick that they probably weren't going to use. So
win-win for them, Pez. Definitely get onto the next one there. Ben Brown, the big one, North Melbourne. They get rid of their big forward who 2 years removed, Coleman medalist, couldn't really get it on the scoreboard, the longest run-up ever, and he gets sent off to Melbourne as well as a pick 28 and a future 4th-round selection, which is pretty incredible when you think about it.
Yeah, so it was a little bit of a pick swap because North get pick 26 back and they get pick 33, and then another future 4th-rounder, which is tied to Brisbane, which you'd imagine would be a little bit worse than what the Melbourne would receive. But the big story is Ben Brown going there. Ben Brown thought he was going to be a North player through and through. He thought he was going to move over to Tasmania where he grew up and do all that. But Melbourne aren't going to be doing that. But what Melbourne do need, Sauce, is they need a tall forward. I don't know if Ben Brown is the tall forward they need, but at least they got him. He can kick a goal. He can get on the lead. If he gets some space, he's a very accurate kick a goal. He's a Coleman medalist, as you said, and a great pickup for Melbourne in my eyes.
It's a great pickup for Melbourne, not only because they get a decent sort of forward who's probably good at getting about 40 goals if he has the right delivery. Their backup forward who was playing sometimes as their main forward, Tom McDonald, when he was the second tier forward to Jesse Hogan, he was in the best form of his career. So he gets that opportunity to be that second forward if they can keep him up forward. And I think they get better in that forward line. He is a person that is very, very rigid in terms of structure. He's a one-trick pony where he leads to the one spot and hits it. Hopefully Melbourne can get some good forward entries. We know that has been a real struggle for them, but it's a huge pickup for Melbourne, and it's a good pickup for North as well because they're doing the rebuild properly. They're just gutting everything, getting as many picks as they can. And as you said...
I wonder if they'll get to that 44 mark on the list.
They probably will. There's not many people left. They delisted a lot of people.
I need to get all the draft picks and things like that. But the next one is St Kilda. They get Jack Higgins and a couple of pick swaps and then a little bit of a future pick swap as well. So St Kilda get Jack Higgins from the Tigers. They get their 1st-round pick, which is 21, and they give back pick 17, so a four-pick slip. And then they give a future 4th round, and then they get a 2nd round back for that. So Richmond got a 2nd round for a 4th rounder. They got 4 spots better in the 1st round and gave up Jack Higgins, who was on the fringe.
Yeah, on the fringe. The last 3 years he's really struggled to get into that side. He did play in that 2018 grand final, but unfortunately didn't get a game in the 2020 grand final. He did have that brain injury that he was recovering on, but long-time St Kilda fan, and he was a little bit excited when he heard the news. He did have the old celebration. He put up a couple of photos of when he was younger, barracking for St Kilda, so that's good news for Saints there, Pez.
Yeah, 2009 prelim final with the Bulldogs. He was pretty happy when St Kilda won that and got into the grand final that year, and as a young guy, he would have dreamed of playing for St Kilda then, and lots of people do when they're young and doing that, and his dreams actually come true. He played for Richmond, so his dream already came true, but now he gets to play for the club that he loves. And I'm sure he'd still love them deep down, and now he gets to put on that jumper, and hopefully he can provide something for them. There's been a lot of talk that he'll play in the midfield. I think he's got to play up forward and then pinch hit in the midfield here and there, but hopefully he can fit in nicely to that St Kilda lineup and improve us.
Yeah, I don't know if Jack Higgins has the tank to play in the midfield at long stints of time, but down forward it'd be great for a little inclusion. He's a good little goal sneak, classically winning the 2018 Goal of the Year where he sort of craftily threw the ball into his boot going around the goalpost, but a great little pickup for St Kilda, and as you said, childhood dream. Good luck to the kid. Good luck to him.
Oh, definitely, and hopefully, he becomes a common medalist and St Kilda get that top 4 spot.
Yeah, moving on to the next one. We're going to ignore that one. We had Alex Witherton from Brisbane, got sent over to West Coast with a 5th round pick, which was currently attached at number 86. Brisbane received a 3rd round pick, currently 58, and a future 3rd round selection. We're seeing a lot of those 2 picks and a player going to get something back. This is a big pickup for West Coast. I think this is a great trade, and I can't believe Brisbane didn't really get much back for it. It blew my mind a bit.
Oh yeah, I'm liking this. Witherden, he played some games and he impressed me playing late in the season for Brisbane, and just couldn't stay in the side. And West Coast pick him up. West Coast as a contender. Witherden gets to go across that half-back line. He's got a booming kick on him. He's got a very accurate kick, and I really like Witherden as a player. So if West Coast can get the ball in his hands coming off the half-back line, kicking it up, hopefully get it to those forwards in Kennedy and Darling and whoever else they've got up there with if Willie Rioli gets his ban overturned and things like that. But yeah, probably not. But we can always dream, because I like watching Willie Rioli play.
It's good to see Big Willie on the field. It's a shame that they've had to hide Willie. That's one of the games that I like. Used to play when I was a little bit younger, mate. But
You can't be doing that.
I could easily do that, Pez. Alex Witherden, though, when 2019, when they Brisbane surprised a lot of people, he was a big part of that in defence, and just couldn't find a regular gig in 2020 with injury, and fall out of favour with obviously the success that Brisbane had. But great little pickup, and they didn't really give up much, West Coast, so it's a perfect pickup for them. And West Coast are getting better and better, mate. They're slowly building a nice little list.
Better and better. I saw today delisted Lewis Jetta. Bit of a surprise in some people's eyes, but obviously not working really hard, and they've got Alex Witherden obviously to replace him off the half back line there.
Yeah, so I don't know what you would say to that, Pez.
I'm thinking Lewis Jetta is going to be picked up by someone. I think
can he be picked up now? He's been delisted. Can teams just?
It's good. The draft's coming up.
So he's going to go into the draft, is he?
Draft or the rookie draft, probably pre-season draft.
Where would he fit in, Lewis Jetta? He'd be good on little Gold Coast.
That's the first club that came to my mind.
A little bit of experience, a senior sort of player, a little bit of an X factor. Yeah, he'd fit in nicely there.
Yeah,
I'll let him know. I'll let him know.
Let him know. Go from there.
All right, speaking of people that are letting teams know, Pez, I'm letting you know straight off, this is one of the deals of the trade period. North Melbourne absolutely cleaned up. They got Jaden Stephen and R2 Bosnavilogui.
I'm surprised you wanted to have a go with that.
I did want to
let me say the names.
Yeah, and a second round pick, which is currently 39 from Collingwood, with that massive drama that is going on at Collingwood at the moment. Their overhaul of the list and the tapping people on the shoulder and kicking them out the door. They only received a second round pick, which is currently 26, a second round pick, which is 33, and a fourth round pick, which is 70, which is incredible from a rising star, a forward in his first year that kicked a goal in a grand final, which is something that a lot of forwards, won't be able to say. Crafty little forward, has a little bit of a problem in the punt, but
yeah, we'll take responsibility for that.
I'm backing him in.
We'll take responsibility of that with our cheeky punt pod that we do as well. But Jaden Stevenson, I think this is an absolute steal. I agree with you, Sauce, because he's going to North, but good to see what he can do without much delivery down there. But he's quick off the mark, and he starts games off really, really well. Rising star from a couple of seasons ago, fell out of favour. I think Bucks was playing him out of
defender at one stage
on the wing, and then he went into defence, and it was just strange. So Stevenson, North, whoever the coach is, play him up forward. When the ball goes down there,
let him do his thing.
He'll kick you some goals. Let him do his thing, and a great deal for them. And they get R2 as well, who get around him.
He actually benefited the pod, Pez. We had a bet on him in the first game. When we went through that trend of all those players having their first game, he kicked a nice little goal for Collingwood. He kicked 3 in his first game, 3-5 or something like that. probably wasn't 5, it was probably 3-2. But he looks good. They got 2 forwards there, so automatically replacements for Ben Brown, and already I think makes their forward line a little bit more mobile, because that was one of the issues with North Melbourne. They were very stagnant. They were very Ben Brown centric. 2 young forwards in the right age bracket, Pez, even younger than the age bracket. It's a good pick up for North.
Oh, it's unbelievable. So we move on to another pick swap, and if it's a pick swap, who's involved, Sauce?
Melbourne. They're stocking up.
Get around them.
It's a blockbuster.
Melbourne are actually giving their pick 25 that they just got recently, and we just spoke about.
Hard to keep track.
And they get pick 18 and 19 back, and a future second round. And they gave up 2 fourth-round picks, which are 68 and 69, and a future first-round selection. So Melbourne going pretty broad, giving that first-round selection up in the future, because I don't think Melbourne are going to be very good. So Brisbane doing all right out of that.
They are doing all right out of that, but they are actively involved. A lot of Melbourne supporters probably thinking, hey, hang on a tick, why couldn't we actually get anyone except Ben Brown? But they are acquiring a lot. They're getting a lot of picks. So there must be something that they're building towards, because you wouldn't actively shop as many picks as you are trying to acquire without having a plan of attack. It'd be interesting to see what happens there.
Definitely, and I was very interested to see if Orazio Fantasia would get across to Port Adelaide.
Finally.
And he did after a couple of years, and Port Adelaide get Fantasia, they get pick 73, and Essendon get pick 29 and a future third rounder.
29, for a bloke that didn't play last year, is injury ridden. I know that there's a system there, but
You've got to take the risk.
you got to take it. What do you think of this? I was talking about this with a mate earlier today. Port Adelaide, their forward line was pretty good, pretty structured. How does he fit in there? Does that mean that pushes Robbie Gray a little bit more into that midfield?
It has to. That's the only thing you can think of, because they've got those, small type players down there.
They've got the younger ones too.
That can kick goals and do those sorts of things. So Robbie Gray, do they want him more in the midfield? Do they want Fantasia more in the midfield? I don't see him really as a midfielder, especially with a year off footy, and his tank won't be as good. So, I think Port Adelaide, they're in contention. They've got to give it up.
They're in that window.
They've got to give up pick 29. Pick 29 isn't going to be playing in the next couple of years for Port Adelaide. So they're trying to go for it.
Yeah, they are definitely trying to go for it. Talking about teams that were trying to go for it, but for some reason had a lot of salary cap issues, because that's what I'm gathering from it, is Collingwood. Before we get into this, Pez, have you ever seen a trade period where a team has just automatically shit the bed, basically? Because
Won the wooden spoon?
What has absolutely happened with Collingwood? They went through an absolute spiral of events, from the Adam Treloar fiasco to getting rid of a rising star from 3 years ago, offloading Tom Phillips. They're just clearing shed. But to have the coach come out and say, a range of different things around one player is like, the leadership group don't believe that you're a good bloke around the footy club. And he's like, well, that's news to me. Oh, don't you want to go up there with your wife? And he's like, no, I'm okay. I'm happy to stay here. We don't want to pay you that much money.
No one likes you.
Get
out.
What? And he's just like, no, I'm happy to stay.
It was a shambles. Collingwood supporters
shambles.
are not happy about it. On social media, they've been going, what the hell is going on at Collingwood? They gave up Tom Phillips to Hawthorn, and Hawthorn, they get some good deals out of this. They gave up pick 65, which is a nothing pick, and got Tom Phillips. Now, I don't rate Tom Phillips that highly, but he's better than a pick 65 will come out and do. So get Tom Phillips down there. They got Scully for like pick 73 the other year, which was a bargain as well. And Hawthorn just getting those bargains, and Collingwood just shitting the bed, as you said.
I think it's probably the best way to describe it. But Tom Phillips, he did all right when he had the opportunities last year. As you said, you don't rate him as a decent sort of player, but he's going to give you 15, 16 sort of touches. He might sneak up and snag a goal here and there. He knows he's ran around the pill. He's had some premiership experience in terms of, of a team that was, doing really well in that higher ends and then being the hunted. So great pickup for Hawthorn. Doesn't make their list a whole lot better. Probably not. But, as you said, it's a nice little side deal, and it's more to the point of articulating what the hell are Collingwood doing.
We don't know, and we'll be speaking about what they're doing in a couple of trades' time. But this first trade is Jai Caldwell, who was linked to St Kilda early in the final series, and he's actually come into Essendon. So Essendon have picked him up. They picked up pick 44 and pick 74, and GWS picked up pick 29 and a future second rounder. So GWS have improved in the draft for this year, a future second round as well, so they improve there, and give up Jai Caldwell, who did not want to be there, couldn't find his way in, played a couple of games, and plays at Essendon, who will slot into that midfield.
Yeah, GWS were not happy about losing this, and they fought really hard to try and get some decent return from him. But a former number 11 pick in the 2018 draft, a midfielder, they were really excited about him and trying to get him the games, obviously, with, GWS having that midfield talent and them doing so well. They were absolutely heartbroken to lose him. But for Essendon, that's a huge pickup, and I know GWS were not happy about receiving a future second round pick, but when the bloke hasn't played a lot and he's in that lower age bracket and he's not on a lot of money, you can't expect to get so much back for potential. And I think GWS were probably the team that were unfortunate during this trade period, whereas Collingwood, absolutely, as we said, shit the bed. But GWS were unfortunately rated a little bit. I think they were getting a little bit frustrated with how rated they were getting.
Oh, how rated they're getting. They had, what do they have, 142 first-round picks when they first started, and they're bound to get rated sooner or later.
Yeah, maybe.
Oh, they have to be rated. They've been rated every single year. They lose talent here and there. Dylan Shield, Adam Treloar, they lose high-end talent all the time, and now they're at a stage where they kind of need to keep that talent because all the talent has started to go, and they've still got a lot of talent there. So Jai Caldwell, as a young player, you know what? If you wanted him so badly, just play him and promise him the world, and he couldn't fit him in.
It couldn't fit him into that side. And you can't play him out of position because, realistically, GWS was stacked at every position. It was probably a bit disappointing to have the season they did, but where does he fit in? He's stacked at that, and then you see their draft pick from last year. He gets into the side, and he's an automatic walk-up start. You're right. He can't be a part of that future if you're not giving him a game. So it's disappointing for them. I think I have a soft spot for GWS until they rated Geelong for 3 picks, but because they seem to be that club, similar to our team in the NBA, Pez, that small market team where you build up some talent, you draft these players, and then as soon as they get decent, see you later.
Yeah, and the next trade is the biggest trade, I will say. Well, one of the biggest trades. The next two are Adam Treloar, who they wanted to ship him off to Gold Coast last season. They wanted to ship him off to Gold Coast again. They had to come out and say, mate, the team doesn't like you. The leadership group voted you out. We don't want to pay you the $900,000 a year. He's been contracted for the next 5 years at Collingwood, and out the door, mate.
Out the door, and even Collingwood even said that they would pay $300,000 of their contract for another team to pick him up. They were desperate to get rid of him, so they obviously overcooked the books there at Collingwood. But great news for the Bulldogs in terms of, as you said, probably one of the biggest deals. They receive Adam Treloar, 2 second-round picks, which are currently now 26 and 33, and a third-round pick, currently 42. Collingwood receives a first-round pick, which is 14, and a future second-round selection, which is crazy.
And the Bulldogs have a father-son pickup, and pick 14 is probably what they would have had to use to get him, but they've got picks back that they have enough points to get him. So
that's crazy.
They give up pick 14, which is nothing for them because they get back the same thing because they're going to use the same picks to get that same player. And they get Adam Treloar as well. So they get him pretty much for free. They've got to pay him possibly 600, might be 300, 200 or 100,000, whichever Collingwood are paying him. We don't know. It's not official or anything, but the rumour was about 300,000 source. So Bulldogs get him for 600,000 for a player of that calibre. Slot him in there. You can't say no.
You can't say no, and it's an interesting one because the Western Bulldogs instantly get better with that acquisition. But in terms of their talent, it's not doubted that they've got a lot of talent around that midfield. It will be interesting to see how actually impactful it is on the field. They're going to get another player that accumulates a lot of the football. There's not going to be enough pill to go around at the Western Bulldogs, I think.
There's not. And one of the things that we are going to talk about later, you know what? We have to talk about it now, is Josh Dunkley for the Bulldogs, who requested a trade to Essendon. There was a lot of stuff early on. Didn't end up going to Essendon. Bulldogs didn't want to do...
because he only said, I'll only go to Essendon or I'm happy to stay there for another year. That's crazy. That's weird, that.
So they're going to keep him. They used him out of position this year. They played him as a second ruck, which is... pretty ludicrous, but they've got in the big fella Stephen Martin next year and Tim English, so he doesn't need to play second ruck.
He's going to have to adjust.
In the midfield, he probably doesn't have a spot there. They've got so much talent in that midfield. Tommy Liberatore is not playing anywhere else but the midfield. Yeah. You've got
Bailey Smith.
Bailey Smith,
third-year player. He's the only player in that midfield that they currently have. Take out, obviously, Libba, who doesn't play full-time midfield. He sort of comes off that wing position as well. Sometimes he plays off that.
Absolute superstar. McRae.
That up and in under player that goes and gets the pill. But then you look at these ones. Dunkley, an accumulator of the football. A Hunter, accumulator of the football. You're going to have Treloar in there, accumulator of the football. Like, all of those players can average 40-plus touches.
Look, Hunter's going to a half-back. He's going to a wing, something like that. I don't know what they're going to do with Dunkley. They're probably going to play him off a half-forward line.
Bontempelli
might have to become a permanent forward.
Caleb Daniel goes in there a bit, plays.
It's their strength is the midfield, obviously, and they've got a really good midfield going in. But please do not make the mistake of saying Bulldogs are going to win the premiership like people did last year, because they were nowhere near it. They don't have the forward line for it. They don't have the defence for it. So they've got to keep growing and keep building. And they've got a couple of pieces now in that midfield that they might have to offload to improve their other lines, because you're great having a good midfield. You've got to have someone to kick it to.
Yeah, and that's I don't know. As I said, I don't know if it's a good pickup. I mean, obviously you're getting an upgrade in talent, but if you can't ship out Dunkley and sort of go get a forward, which is something that they desperately need, or even a key defender, then it'll be an interesting experiment, probably to say the least. You reckon, Pez? Because to me, a lot of mouths to feed in that midfield, and Dunkley was the reason he wanted out was because he wanted more midfield time. He's definitely not going to get that now. He's going to have to, adjust. He's a couple of years away from being in the All-Australian top 40 that he was in before he had that injury. Couldn't get some regular time in the midfield, and obviously that's not where he wanted to play. So, place to watch, I think, in the Bulldogs, because I think it could go one of two ways. They could sort of, it's not surprise people, but they could build a nice sort of consistent list, and it could really gel in there, or it could be an absolute implosion.
Yeah, unpopular opinion here. I don't think it's going to help them too much, because I think they had a really strong midfield to begin with anyway. If they were able to keep Dunkley and not get Treloar, they got him for free. So this is the thing. You can't have a go at the Bulldogs for getting him for free pretty much. You got to pay him $600,000. They've got no one else to pay anyway. But I think where they needed to improve was their forward line and their defence. They weren't able to do it. I don't think they're going to be a contender for the top four, even with the accusation of Treloar and keeping Dunkley. I think they're going to be fighting for the finals like usual and probably lose that first elimination final like they did in 2020.
Yeah, but they won a premiership in 2017, so it's okay.
2016, they did. And if I was a Bulldog supporter, I'd be very happy with that, because I've never seen a premiership. But
Pez, I think they would have been better to acquire R2 and Jaden Stevenson. That would have been actually a better deal for them, a more perfect fit with what they had if they were going to keep Dunkley. If you're going to keep Dunkley, then I reckon it would have been better for them to acquire some more forward presence.
Adding Jaden Stevenson to the Bulldogs would have been
perfect.
Would have been amazing.
Frees up Mitch Wallace. You allow Aaron Norton some more time to sort of to develop. You've also got a couple of those blokes, Lipinski that pops up. Lipinski's not going to get a game now.
You're going to forget that Aaron Norton didn't play the start of last season, but Aaron Norton he's their best forward. Yeah. He's their key forward.
What about him?
He's going to be up there, but Bruce has always been a third tier forward. So if he's your first or second thing, you can't be going at that. You need more than that, and I think it doesn't improve them too much. Bulldog supporters are excited.
As you would be. Bulldogs excited just to be in the AFL. That's as I told you, they've got that attitude of like, yay, we're here.
If St Kilda didn't get Brad Crouch, we would have got Treloar. And even though they did get Brad Crouch, I actually wanted Treloar, because
Treloar would have been a better fit for you guys.
The biggest hole in St Kilda is our midfield.
Yep.
So adding Crouch and Treloar would have been amazing, and we would have been in contention.
Yep.
Because our forward line's decent and growing with Max King, and our defense is decent. We just need a centre half back if Carlisle's going to stay, and what's going on there. But that's our thoughts.
I think if Treloar wasn't on that sort of money, then most definitely St Kilda would have picked him up. But I don't think you could have picked up Crouch and Treloar. You had to pick one or two, and realistically, they're the same sort of player. Crouch obviously playing in, he's had some premiership experience. Treloar's had the premiership experience as well. So it's a good little pickup. He's cheaper. He does the same thing. He's going to get you 30 possessions, but as you said, it beefs up that midfield. Is exactly what they needed at St Kilda.
Yeah, and we talk about the I don't know if it's the second biggest or the biggest trade. Probably the biggest trade with
probably the biggest in terms of names.
What was involved, and Jeremy Cameron trade. Geelong, they got Jeremy Cameron. They got 2 future second round picks from Essendon. And Greater Western Sydney, they got all 3 first-round picks from Geelong, which you thought they weren't even going to give up 2, Sauce, when I spoke to you on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. And they also picked up a future 4th rounder.
Yeah, definitely wrong on that. I think they are definitely overpaid. But I think upon reflection, you're obviously always going to go, if Jeremy Cameron wants to come to you and you're in premiership contention, you're going to throw away the kitchen sink to get him. They were playing chicken with GWS, and I don't know whether the game of chicken actually won because they end up getting the player that they wanted. Picks 13, 15, 20, and even the future 4th round pick. They're not going to be playing next season anyway for Geelong side. They just come off 5 goals short of a premiership. So for me, it is a lot to give up. I think they definitely overpaid for it, but in the same regard, Geelong haven't lost anything. You're going to have Cameron for 3 or 4 years, and in 3 or 4 years, Geelong seem to be a team that, they haven't been down the bottom of the ladder for so long. And look, there's 3 picks in the top 20. So overpaid for me, but no one wouldn't do that trade.
You have to do that trade, and you had to get it done. It had to be very late that they did get it done. And Jeremy Cameron, Coleman medalist from 2 seasons ago. They got Tommy Hawkins as a Coleman medalist. And Tommy Hawkins is a big assist man. So that's why I think Jeremy Cameron fits really well down here, because he likes to get the goals over the top. He likes to not be the number 1 man and not really be that lead-up type forward. Tom Hawkins can do that part. And Jeremy Cameron can be like that second tier. If you're playing against Geelong, you're struggling. You've got to man up Hawkins. You've got to man up Cameron. And then, hey, if Dangerfield goes up forward, you might have to man up him as well.
Let's address the tall timbers to begin with. Your number 1 defender, who does he go to? Do you go to the current Coleman medalist, or do you go to the year before Coleman medalist? Like, who does the number 1 forward go to? Or the number 1 defender go to?
It depends what your number 1 defender does. Does your number 1 defender play up the ground more? He goes to Cameron.
And that is where, but the thing is, Hawkins has proven to play up the ground either. They play almost identical sort of roles. Hawkins, obviously, coming up in age a lot more, and Jeremy Cameron's a little bit more creative and a little bit more mobile. But as you said, Hawkins doesn't always want to kick the goals. So, if Jeremy Cameron gets that number 1 defender and he's now your second options as Hawkins, you take him straight to the goal square and you make absolute mincemeat of him and you kick 10.
Oh, this is going to be scary looking at
it's scary.
Jesse Cameron down there. He's been one of the star forwards, that hybrid type forward that isn't the big monster. He's got that thin type body type where he can just run up and down the ground, run over the top, and he can take the mark on the lead as well. But I think it just adds strength to Geelong, and Geelong are just going for it. They missed out in that grand final this year, and they want to go for it again.
I mean, they've got to go for it. I mean, you're talking about Jesse Cameron here. He's kicked 427 goals in his 8-year career. That's an amazing feat. He's averaging over 15 games a year. It's going to be really scary. And I think that you forget, as you said, how mobile and how actually athletic he is. One-on-one, he's an amazing to the contest. He can get you position-wise and beat you to the spot and lead to a great spot. He also pushes up the ground. He's got a decent sort of tank on him for a big bloke.
I love watching him kick inside 50 as well, which he had to do a little bit. He had to sacrifice his game when GWS was struggling. He had to go up the ground and get the marks up the ground and get the kicks inside forward 50. So if he can hit Tommy Hawkins on the lead, wow, that's very scary. And Geelong jump straight up in contention.
Yeah, most definitely. And just an interesting thing for him, 9 times Great and Western's Sydney's leading golden scorer. So 9 years straight. So that's probably going to come to an end this year because Tomahawk, back-to-back Colemans for Toma.
The golden scorer.
Yeah, golden.
A bit of soccer. Bit of the golden boot. Get the golden boot on Jezza. Get him around 9 times. Is he going to compete with Tomahawk, as you said? Who's going to get the golden boot there?
All right, moving on to the next one there, mate. They definitely got the golden trade, that one. I think that's an absolute, I don't know if it's a steal, but it's definitely one of the biggest trades in terms of what they gave away but what they got back. And I think both teams benefit from that one. As we said, GWS a little bit shitty that they've been getting rated the last couple of years, but they definitely got a nice little haul here.
And they had to, because they could have just chose not to match it. And what would have they got? They would have got pick 21.
They would have got 1 pick, which is ridiculous because they couldn't sign him after 9 years. Yeah, anyway.
They would have got pick 21, but they got pick 13, 15 and 20. So thank you very much. We'll take that and we'll try and do a miniature rebuild and try and still compete next year. But the biggest trade of all, no, not the biggest trade.
Not the biggest trade, but a little disappointing that this is the last trade that went through. the Jeremy Cameron one was toted for months leading up to that, and it's sort of good when you finish off the trade with that nice little talk. But I said to this before Pez when we were doing our planning, I said, Nick Hind, who's that? He played for St Kilda. Who's that?
He did. He struggled a bit. He's meant to have a bit of pace and kicked a couple of goals this season and was in and out of the side, but he wasn't going to be in the 22 for St Kilda, especially with Jack Higgins coming in. So Essendon got Nick Hind. They got pick 77. St Kilda got pick 74 back and actually pick 67 as well. So a couple of pick swaps, and St Kilda didn't get too much back. No one lost anything, and we'll get rid of Nick Hind and put another spot on our list. Yeah,
I joked I didn't know who he was, but he 2-year player, one of those mature age sort of players that came in. He definitely made a name for himself in the VFL. He was Essendon's VFL side before he got picked up by them and by St Kilda. Yeah, a bit of a nothing sort of player. He'd probably give you 10 or so games, get a couple of goals here and there. He'd always sort of sneak up one for the anytime goal scorers on Sportsbet, but yeah, not a huge one. It's a bit disappointing that
Great way to end the show.
Yeah, the show isn't a little bit disappointing, but it was a good little show, Pez, and it was good to discuss 2 weeks removed.
Yeah, 2 weeks removed. Unfortunately, you couldn't make it last week, Sauce, to talk about the end of that, but that's all right. We'll be back. I can't promise a date or anything because we don't know when Sauce will be available. Don't you be doing that, Sauce. But you know what? Our next show, we might have to talk about who won, who lost. Things like that from the trade period. What teams got in, what teams lost, what players are coming out of contract and things like that.
Maybe one of those way too early sort of calls for 2021 that we love to make, Pez, just straight looking at list alone, not looking at dynamics or looking at fixture or anything, just a little bit of where we think they're going to finish and maybe leaving a bit of some sort of report card, I guess, who won, who lost the trade period. I mean, it's very clear who lost, but...
well, Collingwood are the losers.
Collingwood definitely a loser, but...
Bulldogs are the winners.
Geelong are the winners.
I'd say Bulldogs first.
Well, that's why we're having a pod next Thursday.
We'll go from there. Good to get back on it again. Hopefully the listeners have enjoyed that, and we'll jump on board our Twitter at Behind the Bound, Instagram at Behind the Bound as well, and Facebook Behind the Boundary Podcast, which will be very active in the AFL season. We can't wait, Sauce, for the AFL season to come back. There's been big talks about the trade period here, and the NBA has actually picked up some trade period stuff. I'd love to do an NBA podcast.
An NBA one after today's draft.
You'd be talking about lots of that stuff, but our listeners probably wouldn't. We don't know who's an NBA fan and who's not. So let us know at Behind the Bound. Hopefully you enjoyed us and our analysis of the trade period. If you agree or disagree, hit us up at Behind the Bound. I'm Pez. Peace out.
I'm still Sauce. We'll catch up next Thursday, guys. See you later.